Just like every other gamer, I have plenty of games in my backlog that I still haven't finished, but now is the time to go back and finish some of those games. The only problem was figuring out where to start, so I decided to have this random spinner decide which games I play for a week. The rules: I had to play each game for at least 30 minutes before moving on. Games would reset at the beginning of each day, so I couldn't just play one game for half the challenge. Now, let's spin for our first game. And our first game is Pokemon Legends ZA. This is the only game on the wheel that I've actually finished, minus a couple of post-game DLC stuff. The reason it's on this wheel is I set a goal to complete a shiny living dex in this game, something I still haven't done yet. So I grabbed my Switch and got to hunting, and I was actually able to find a couple shinies, including Patrat, Bunnelby, which I already had, Strudel, and Sandygast. That evening I spun the wheel again and got MIO, Memories in Orbit, a beautiful Metroidvania game I started playing a couple months ago, but stopped due to starting some larger games. The boss fights in this game are difficult, but not quite as hard as Hollow Knight or some other Metroidvanias. I left off on this boss fight against a cat, so it was time to finally take them down. It wasn't looking good, but I was learning his attacks bit by bit, so with the timer nearing 30 minutes, it was time for one last attempt. Okay, one last good attempt. I got him down past half health before losing once again. With that, it was time to move on to. Starting day 2, we have A Juggler's Tale, which is by far my least favorite game I've ever played. It's a puzzle game, but all the puzzles end up making me feel stupid, which maybe I just am, but even when I knew the solution, I got stuck because I couldn't angle this torch properly to get it over the ledge or hit the spider. But after trying, I finally was able to hit the spider, but it was even harder to hit it again without dying. Finally, I hit it twice and just needed one more hit. Did manage to defeat the spider eventually and move on. This took me 15 more minutes of trying. The next puzzle was this little zipline cart thing, which I had to wheel down, but it wasn't fast enough to keep my torch lit, so I kept trying before realizing I could also call the cart on the other side, take it down the slope to move faster. Then broke and caused a fire, which I could use to relight my torch, so I just moved on and left the future forest fire behind me. I then sneaked past this bandit to reach the ringleader of the circus I escaped, talking to these guys about how they needed to capture me, so I had to sneak past all of them by using the completely obvious solution of cutting a log with the nearby saw and pushing it onto this guy's head so that he would blame and start fighting this other guy. Yet, was it obvious I used a tutorial? I then crossed a river by knocking over this dummy-looking thing. I figured out I had to put it in this trap to not get caught, but I couldn't manage to knock it over again. I wanted to finish this act, but the 30 minutes had already passed and I couldn't afford to spend any more time with this game, so I just moved on. The next game was Enter the Gungeon, a roguelike I had bought a month ago but hadn't started yet. I picked the hunter character because of the cute puppy it came with, but before going into my first run, there was a quick tutorial to complete. So I followed this blue creature as he taught me the basics, such as dodging, using blanks to clear bullets, and shooting. I then went through some trial rooms, fighting enemies until I reached a boss fight with the creature to end the tutorial. I won on just half a heart and was ready to begin my first run in the Gungeon. My first couple runs didn't go so well, as I was new to the game and hadn't learned the enemy's attacks yet. It was only lasting about 30 minutes on average. I did have one good run though, where I made it to the shop to buy some items and freed this prisoner, then continued exploring the floor before making it to the game's first boss, this giant ripped bird with a gun. I was low on health from the start, but managed to learn how to dodge his attacks. However, I eventually died. With only 28 minutes on the clock, I had time for one final run, where I quickly died after only 3 minutes again. The last game on day 2 was Persona 5 Royal, the most recent game I had been playing, but I was in between missions and gameplay was slowing down, as all I really had to do while waiting for the next mission was raise my stats and relationships. So I studied to raise my knowledge, helped out in the cafe, let this doctor test medicine on me to raise my guts. When this officer started questioning her, apparently she is known as the Plague and is a reject within the medical industry, but she wouldn't tell me more about how she got that nickname. Later I got the opportunity to hang out with Ryuji, where I learned more about his old friends on the track team and why they blamed him for the team disbanding. The rest of the time I continued to raise stats and relationships, had a conversation with Ryuji over some ramen, as well as a quick conversation with my other friend On, before heading back to the clinic for some more medicine tests. I decided to stop here for the day, as the 30 minutes were complete, and I only had one more day to wait before the next story events. Our first game of day 3 is Celeste, a precision platformer known for its difficulty and story. Precision platformers are one of my least favorite genres, so I was only playing this game for the story, which is why I chose to play on Assist mode. I'm also surprisingly bad at video games, even though I've been playing my whole life. I loved having the option because I could choose to complete the less difficult rooms on my own, give others a couple tries, or just skip the ones I had no chance at. I was on Chapter 3, where I followed this hotel owner, who I'm pretty sure is a ghost, around as he insisted on having me stay there. The hotel was a mess though, so I had to go around finding these different switches to tidy up the place. When I had finally made it to the room, my evil mirror self that's here to cause trouble and self-doubt told Mr. Ghost Dude his hotel wasn't good enough, which really upset him and caused him to turn into giant angry Mr. Ghost Dude. After running from him, he finally calmed down and went back into the hotel. We completed the chapter, which took about 50 minutes. The next game the wheel spun for us was The Return of the Obra Dinn, a sort of murder mystery game where you arrive at the scene of an abandoned ship whose crew never returned and you have to figure out what happened to all of them using this mysterious pocket watch that shows you the past, and I didn't end up playing it. It was late and I ended up watching YouTube videos instead, but I made up for it by playing more games on. To start day 4, the wheel landed on Wildermyth, one of the first indie games I got when I really started collecting for the Switch, because it reminded me of Dungeons & Dragons and the TTRPG formula, but I got bored very quickly. I also wasn't sure what to do at this stage in the game, so just explored some areas and then got into a battle where my main reason for leaving this game earlier really shined. I didn't know how to train up my team. My party members would easily get attacked by multiple monsters or attacked twice and be killed in one turn, so I had to recruit new characters, which made it really hard to get into the story. I ended with one final battle that I was actually winning, but I couldn't find the last couple enemies, so I just turned the game off once the timer reached 30 minutes. I spun the wheel again, and this time it landed on Pogopia, a game I finally picked up the other week and was so excited to play. I did all the starting stuff, such as making my character, meeting the professor, and setting up habitats for Squirtle, Bulbasaur, and Charmander, before then venturing out farther to create more habitats, to meet more Pokemon and gain more abilities. I was then tasked with restoring the Pokemon Center, and for that I needed to get Onyx, who was stuck in these rocks. I needed to make it rain so that the soil would soften, and for that I needed to befriend Slowpoke, which I did, but for him to make it rain he needed to yawn, which means we needed to, as Bulbasaur said, make it humid. But this is where I left off for the day, but not before spinning for one more game to play before I went to bed. Downwell is a short indie roguelike where you go down a well. I bought this along with other games due to having some extra money on a gift card and just prioritized the other games over this, which is why I haven't played much of it, but that changes now. I started going down the first couple levels, and in this game you jump on the enemies to damage them while avoiding others, and the most annoying enemy by far are these bat things. They kept flying into me, or I would jump off other enemies and into them. Eventually I made it to Catacomb 1, the farthest I've ever made it, before shortly dying. I made it back a couple times, but never got any farther, and with that I moved on to... I only had time for one game on day 5, which was Revita, another roguelike. If you're wondering why I have so many, it's because it's one of my favorite genres. In this game, you go through a subway system climbing up elevators and defeating enemies. Since I hadn't played this game in months, I was a little rusty and didn't make it very far my first couple of runs. The main gimmick of this game is that you use your health to buy upgrades at these statue areas or at chests, which I was taking a lot of hits early on and didn't have extra health to get the good upgrades. I had one run where I made it to the first boss, but unfortunately I lost as I only had one heart left. After, I went looking around to see if I could upgrade anything, before starting my last and best run. Got an extra heart early on, which I had to fill up by taking out enough enemies to heal. I also got shields, which basically serve as temporary health, meaning I could afford to buy upgrades. I made it to the boss with what was essentially 6.5 hearts, eventually remembered what to do in the fight, only taking enough damage to get rid of my shields, meaning I still had plenty of health for the future levels. I was then given the option to save my run, which I did as I needed to get ready for work, but don't worry, we'll be continuing this run later. It was now day 6, and I was nearing the end of the challenge, but it was time to spin the wheel again, and today's game was the Mega Man Legacy Collection. I hadn't started this game yet, so I chose to play Mega Man 2, so I heard it was the best one to start with. I didn't know which boss or area was the best one to do first, so I just tried everyone and moved on if I got too many game overs. I tried Bubble Man first and found these frogs hard to deal with, especially since I didn't know the controls yet. I made it past them, but found these jellyfish things hard to get past, so I moved on to Woodman, which started easy, but I struggled to dodge these flame-breathing dogs. I then decided to Google which boss was the easiest, so I could start with that one and do the more difficult ones later. I was told Flashman was the best to begin with. I didn't find the level to be that hard until the end, with these robots that had a lot of health and was a lot of them to avoid. I eventually made it to the boss room to fight Flashman and got him to half health on my first attempt, before coming back with full health and just barely beating him on my third attempt. That was unfortunately all the time I had on day 6, but I had made sure to play a lot of games on. To start off the last day, the wheel chose for us to play Sparklight, which has roguelike mechanics to it, but isn't a full roguelike like the other games on this list. I didn't really know where to go, so I was just exploring the first area, but eventually after a couple of runs, I made my way back to this dungeon, where I defeated the guards and found the first boss, which I had only ever battled once. Took a lot of damage at the beginning, but then managed to dodge all its attacks and win the battle. This reunited me with my lost companion. I found out about the other bosses in some corrupted version of Sparklight that made these creations dangerous, and also about the game's villain, the Baron. The other bosses were a problem for later, as our next game was Origin, for real this time. I started by finishing up the current chapter I was on and investigating the bodies around the ship, trying to figure out the identities and fates of the different crew members. This guy seemed to be strangled by some sea monster that attacked the ship, this guy definitely exploded, and this guy seemed to be crushed by a runaway cannon during an attack. Tried my best to look for any additional clues, but didn't have enough information to determine anyone's true identities. As day 7 was nearing an end, it was time to spin for our last game. It was only fitting that it landed on Revita, and it was time to finish our run from earlier. I got this golden bullet to increase our fire rate before moving on to the second area, the fun-gated funnels, which had new types of enemies to battle against. There was this one room where I got slammed by all these slugs and lost half my health, but other than that I was doing good. Didn't really want any of the upgrades I was given, so I chose to save my health instead, which was quickly healing thanks to all the enemies I was defeating. I eventually made my way to the second boss with 3 hearts left. I was doing okay to start, but started taking a lot of damage. I ended up winning with only half a heart. The farthest I had ever made it was the boss in the next area, the Iridophenium. And with only 1 heart thanks to some healing, I had to play my best to make it through. I did good on the first few floors despite facing new enemies and made it to the offering shrine, but sadly didn't have any health to give. With only half a heart left, I died on the next floor. After the end of day 7, I was happy to choose my own games again, but I was glad I took on this challenge as it helped me regain interest in games I had in my backlog for far too long. Who knows, maybe I'll end up fully finishing some of these games soon. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like and hitting the subscribe button. Thank you all for watching and have a great rest of your day. Sincerely, Switch.